Yo, what's going on, guys? Jetxc, and I wanted to make this video, one, because I saw it looks like Browndust2 is doing something rare that they've done a couple times. It looks like they're advertising in Ikebukuro and a few other places in Japan for the Goblin Slayer collab. Now, I bring this up to say the main reason I believe Goblin Slayer collab is going to be great for them is it's a chance for them to bring in new players. And I think there's been a lot of controversy for the past week on this whole thing that a lot of people are contemplating whether or not they even want collabs now. And, you know, here's the thing. I've seen people say it's just not worth it. They think, like I was reading a couple of comments and a couple of opinions, but they essentially think that Browndust2 by itself is just best doing their own designs, their own cutscenes, and it's really not worth it to work with other IPs because they just may not get the same amount of freedom to do what they want, right? But I think, and I'm gonna give my opinion on this, right? I think a lot of people gotta understand the benefit of this is, one, you get in a bunch of new players, which would be really good for Browndust2 because if you guys know the background of Browndust2, the first 6 months they were bleeding players like crazy. And then when they went like all female route and then all the way into the half Annie and first Annie, they gained back, I think it was like 100% plus of new players coming up, or at least getting back into the game, right? So I could see the benefit of them actually trying to do a typical anime collab, right? And I want to know what you guys think. Do you think it's worth it for them to do a collab? Because I remember there were surveys going on about whether they should do 2 characters, but those 2 characters have like 2 costumes, or do you prefer doing 4 characters with 1 costume? And now I'm seeing people look at the kits that were talked about on the live stream, and now I see people complaining about how the kits are extremely underwhelming. But in my head, and what I remember, there were people complaining that they wanted to do reruns for certain characters, or it was hard for them to do certain things because characters like Eris were not going to be playable again. Characters like Hokage weren't going to be playable again because they were both collab characters. So the solution to that was to make Wilhelmina and was to make Young Blade, because those kits were so unique that people were complaining enough that they managed to put them in another character that would be available. Now, my opinion on the kits, I'm gonna be honest, I really don't think it's about the kits. I really think this shit is about cutscenes, bro. I'm so serious. But I think the kits are fine, right? I think the only time these costumes will be viable, to be honest with you, is either in PvP, Guild Raid, or Fiend Hunt. The only reason I say that is because those are the only times when you need like multiple teams, or you just need a whole bunch of characters, right? So in typical and the rest of all the other PvE activities, you're probably not going to need a certain character, right? Like, for example, Priestess, they talked about her on the live stream. They said that she'll have like 75% vulnerability with her attack. Now, obviously, Levia is a comparable unit to that, and Levia is much stronger than that, right? But again, we don't know the exact numbers, which is why I don't want to talk about numbers. But essentially, she does what Levia does, but she's only 1 costume, right? So we don't know how often she could do it. We don't know if it's every turn or every other turn, but that's just an example of like the power disparity between Olivia and between Priestess with her 1 ability. And I think overall that's going to be fine, right? I see people complaining about that, but like I said earlier, I really do think it's about the cutscenes. If the cutscenes were good, I think a lot of people would be quiet and just be like, okay, I'm just going to get a copy of the character and whatever. Right? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you fine with collabs, or do you think after this Goblin Slayer collab and people complaining about a bunch of different things that it's not worth it for them? Because you gotta understand, like, if they don't do collabs anymore, then how do they garner new players, right? Some people may say, well, I mean, look at what happened with Wilhelmina. It went viral for basically her having a big ass, and then it got 23 million views on X. That's a great way, but we don't know how many players actually got into the game with that 1 viral tweet. And plus, it's going to be very hard to replicate something like that again, right? So, I mean, they could do more advertising. Maybe they, I don't know, because the whole point, right? You get new players, and hopefully some of those new players stay and spend money, right? So maybe they do something in game where they have you purchase costumes. I don't know. Like, let's just say, I don't know. What's an idea? Let's just say during the second Annie, right? We get Eclipse, Wedding Eclipse for free, and we get her cutscene. Let's say they did an alternate version of that cutscene. It's just a completely new cutscene, just in a different style, or like just a completely new cutscene, right? And they sell that costume. Okay, new cutscene, and then a slightly different altered costume for Eclipse, and they sell it for like $5 to $10, right? So essentially, you're already getting the costume, and then if you want this alternate version with the new cutscene and an alternate look to the costume, you could get it for like $10. Would that be something that people would want, right? Is that one way for them to, instead of getting new players, they're able to make money somehow, right? Like, I don't know. These are all the thoughts that kind of go through my head, and I'm wondering what would be the best plan of action. Um, but yeah, guys, I do think overall there's nothing wrong with collabs. I just think people are kind of volatile right now. Uh, and, finding a solution is going to be interesting, especially when these surveys comes up. I'm actually a little afraid of the surveys, to be honest with you, because if people say this collab was shit, I'm going to feel so bad because listen, regardless, the skills, I'm okay with the skills not being on par with others, because again, we don't want the same thing to happen again, where people were complaining. But I think people are just going to shit on the fact that the cutscenes weren't up to par. And if they recognize that, then at least for next time, if they do collabs, they can try their best to match the energy that players want, right? Because people were satisfied with the Simran Kagura collab and the Mushoku Tensei collab. So hopefully they could kind of find that spark with another collab. But anyway, guys, let me know all your thoughts on this. Another Yap video from me, but I had to do this because I saw stuff on Reddit. I saw stuff that people were sending me on my Discord, and I'm like, all right, well, time for another Yap session. So, okay, guys, I will see you till next time. Hopefully, next video is on the kits of the characters. I'm out. Later.